There's a consultant in Los Angeles pulling in more money in a single month than most households see in an entire year. Yet when an unexpected expense shows up, she pauses, checks her accounts, and feels a quiet wave of pressure she can't quite explain. She drives a luxury SUV on a lease, lives in a beautifully designed apartment in a prime neighborhood, orders food more often than she cooks, and pays for services that make life smoother, faster, and more comfortable. Everything about her life looks like success from the outside, but behind that image, there's a different reality. No real buffer, no strong sense of control, and a constant need to keep earning at the same level just to maintain what already exists. And the surprising part is, she's not unusual. She represents a growing number of high earners who look financially secure, but feel anything but. Most people believe that income is the solution, that once you hit a certain level, the stress disappears and money becomes less of a concern. But what actually happens is more subtle and far more dangerous. As income increases, spending expands to meet it, and what once felt like progress slowly turns into pressure. This is the high income trap, and it doesn't happen all at once. It builds gradually through decisions that seem logical in isolation, but create something fragile when combined. It begins with small upgrades, a slightly nicer place to live, a better car, more frequent dining out, subscriptions for convenience, comfort, and entertainment. None of these feel irresponsible. In fact, they feel earned. You worked hard, you made more, and now you're allowing your lifestyle to reflect that. The numbers appear to support it, and there's no immediate consequence. But over time, something shifts. These upgrades stop feeling optional and start becoming expected. Your baseline changes. What once felt like a luxury becomes normal, and anything below it starts to feel like a step backward. That's where the trap tightens, because now reducing expenses doesn't feel like a neutral adjustment, it feels like losing something. And so even when there's pressure, even when there's awareness, most people don't reverse course. They maintain, they continue, they stretch just enough to keep everything intact. The issue isn't a lack of knowledge. Most high earners understand how money works. They know about saving, investing, and long-term growth. They've heard the advice, seen the charts, and understand the math. But this isn't a math problem. It's a behavioral one. When income rises, spending tends to follow at nearly the same pace, leaving little room for actual wealth building. And because the lifestyle feels justified, it rarely gets questioned. The result is a life that looks impressive, but operates with very little margin. And margin is what creates security. Without it, even a high income can feel unstable. At the same time, the people who quietly build real wealth often follow a completely different pattern. They don't rush to upgrade everything as soon as their income increases. They're selective. They spend intentionally, choosing what truly matters to them and ignoring what doesn't. They focus less on appearance and more on retention. This creates a striking contrast. Someone who appears average on the surface may have significant financial stability behind the scenes, while someone who appears highly successful may be operating with constant financial pressure. And this contrast becomes even more pronounced in today's environment, where comparison is constant and unavoidable. You're no longer just observing the people around you, you're exposed to a continuous stream of curated lifestyles, filtered moments, and carefully presented success. This shifts your perception without you realizing it. What once felt like enough begins to feel insufficient. What once felt like a luxury becomes expected. And slowly, your spending adjusts to match a standard that was never consciously chosen. This is how the cycle sustains itself. Earn more, spend more, feel the same, or sometimes feel worse, because now there's more at stake, more obligations, more fixed costs, more things that depend on your income staying exactly where it is. And that's where the pressure becomes real, because high income doesn't eliminate financial stress when the structure of your spending leaves no room for error. Bigger earnings often come with bigger commitments, higher housing costs, more expensive transportation, recurring services, lifestyle expectations that are difficult to unwind. These aren't impulsive purchases, they're ongoing obligations, and once they're in place, they become part of your financial identity. Walking them back feels uncomfortable, even when it's necessary. That's what makes the trap so effective. It's built on reasonable decisions made consistently over time. No single choice creates the problem, but together they form a system that requires constant maintenance. And the longer it continues, the harder it becomes to change. The real distinction between financial stability and financial pressure isn't income. It's what happens after income is received. How much is kept, how much is invested, and how much is allowed to disappear into a lifestyle that constantly resets its own expectations. Because income creates opportunity, but behavior determines outcome. Someone earning less but consistently saving and investing can build far more security than someone earning significantly more but spending everything they make. And the difference isn't always visible in the short term. It builds quietly in the background, compounding over time, until eventually the gap becomes undeniable. That's why the cost of this pattern isn't just financial, it's temporal. It's the years where progress could have been made, but was not. The time where small, consistent actions could have created significant results. Once that time passes, it doesn't come back. Even if income increases later, the lost compounding can't be fully recovered. That's the part most people don't see until much later. Breaking out of the cycle doesn't require extreme sacrifice or a complete lifestyle overhaul. It starts with awareness. It requires stepping back and evaluating what your spending is actually doing for you, not in the moment, but over time. Does it create lasting value, or is it simply maintaining an image or a habit? Because many expenses feel justified individually, but when viewed together, they tell a different story. Subscriptions that go unused, space that isn't needed, services that provide convenience but not real value, commitments that quietly reduce flexibility. And once you begin to question these patterns, you create space for change. The most effective shift is simple but powerful. Stop saving what's left after spending and start spending what's left after saving, because what gets prioritized gets done, and what gets delayed often never happens. By automating savings and treating it as non-negotiable, you begin to build a foundation that doesn't depend on willpower. Over time, this changes your relationship with money. The pressure decreases, the margin increases, and your income starts to serve you instead of the other way around. The high income trap persists because people focus on optimizing their lifestyle rather than their stability, and while enjoying money isn't the problem, doing it without intention creates consequences that aren't immediately visible. The goal isn't to eliminate enjoyment, it's to align it with long-term outcomes, because no amount of income will ever feel sufficient if your expectations continue to rise alongside it. Real financial security comes from controlling the gap between what you earn and what you keep. And once that gap begins to grow, everything else starts to change. The anxiety fades, the pressure reduces, and the constant need to maintain a certain level of income becomes less critical. You gain flexibility, options, and the ability to make decisions without fear. The trap is powerful because it feels normal. It doesn't look like a problem from the outside, but once you recognize it, you start to see how common it really is. And more importantly, you realize that it's not permanent, because the same pattern that created it can be reversed. It just requires a shift in focus, from earning more to keeping more, from reacting to choosing, and from maintaining an image to building something that actually lasts. And once that shift happens, the entire dynamic changes. Money stops being something you chase and starts being something you control.